know that Christians who deconstruct have abandoned the authority of God and made themselves their own authority, essentially becoming their own God?
I truly believe deconstructing from Christianity will be at an all-time high in the next 5 years. And it's only because people are truly waking up from the Jesus spell, as I like to call it. People are finally using their minds and are doing the impossible and the unthinkable, which is to analyze and critique and really scam through what they have been given and taught and programmed with, as you know, they grew up in the church and grew up in Christian households, as I did as well. And in this video, we are going to basically react to this video, add commentary, break it down, see how it relates to us, you know, concerning the basis of this topic. So make sure that you hit that like button. All right, hit the subscribe button as well. And let's get into the video.
Hey, did you know that Christians who deconstruct have abandoned the authority of God and made themselves their own authority, essentially becoming their own God? You may have heard that before. I definitely have, because I used to think it and I used to say it. That is, until I deconstructed. I may have put it a little less harshly and said something like, you're leaning on your own understanding instead of leaning on God. But the implication was clear. These people who deconstructed were pridefully trusting themselves rather than trusting God. Now, of course, I see things differently now. I don't speak for everyone who's deconstructed or is deconstructing, but I do think that it's helpful, because there's so much talk about it, to hear from somebody who's sort of been through the process, because I think we can all understand one another a little bit better. My deconstruction didn't start with the decision to lean on my own understanding. And honestly, it felt a lot like the opposite of that. When I was a Christian, I spent a lot of time making sure that what I believed was true, and that usually meant going to sources that had arguments that supported what I already believed. But it turns out that was pretty difficult to do without running into ideas that were critical of Christianity, because those were the very ideas that I was going to those sources to develop a defense for. And that
Facts. And to his first point, when it comes to deconstructing, right? All of us have different routes and different ways and different paths and different ways of coming to this conclusion, right? We all was inspired. It wasn't just something that happened overnight. The devil was whispering in our ear as we were sleeping. It took time to process and really come to this conclusion, because it's something that you really have to slowly, day by day, think about and critique. And you're laying in your bed and you're just wondering about what truly is reality. For him, I can also relate to looking up arguments when it comes to what people have questions about, or when an atheist will try and ask me a question about something or try and debate me. I'll go to gotquestions.org and try and look up all these different answers and questions. And I was so biased in my research and looking for the answer. It's the same thing for him. I came across certain conclusions or certain articles and websites and blogs concerning the basis of major critique of the God of the Bible. And it still didn't. I was a real Jesus freak. All right. You could not make me budge. I was so much of a Jesus freak that I would listen to atheists for fun, just so that I can really understand all the different angles of how an atheist thinks and how they came to their own conclusions. So I was in it. I was deep in it. I was reading the Bible every morning before I went to school, and reading the Bible every night before I went to bed. To this day, I still have notes that I was writing from when I was 7 to when I was 10. I still have my Bible to this day. It is highlighted and written down and noted everywhere, almost on every page. So I was deep into this, and nobody can tell me otherwise. Nobody can try and gaslight me, try and tell me that I wasn't in it. I really didn't have a relationship. I really wasn't a true Christian. No, I was really about that. It was like that. I was really about that life. Let's continue.
That's when I learned that the bulk of people in a lot of different disciplines, whether that be biology or astronomy, geology, psychology, anthropology, archaeology, neuroscience, and in some cases, biblical studies, had come to conclusions that called my particular conservative evangelical Christian belief system into question. This shook me up a lot. And for the first time in my life, I seriously considered the question, what if I'm wrong? I'd never really done that before. I kept reading, and eventually I got to, I think I might be wrong. And then I kept reading some more, and eventually I landed on, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. I was scared. I was unsettled. I was confused. But I felt like I had a choice. I, a guy with only a bachelor's degree who had read a few books, could conclude that all these people who had devoted their lives to studying these subjects so deeply were wrong. Or I could trust them, essentially leaning on their understanding. I can already hear the old me saying, aha, I got you. You made the mistake of trusting human wisdom over God's wisdom. I never talk like that. But I don't think that that is quite the gotcha that my old self thinks that it is, because I think that my particular understanding of God back in those days was actually based on my adherence to a very particular school of thought about God, a 21st century American conservative evangelical Christian one. And so even though I would have told you that I got my view of God from the Bible and from the Holy Spirit, that's what I was trusting, I was actually getting my understanding of the Bible and the Holy Spirit, how the Holy Spirit worked, from people.
Exactly. I literally just made a post today about understanding God, right? Because Christians constantly come to my platform and tell me that you don't have the right, you don't have the power to truly understand God. You don't know God. No man can know God. But let me give you this book and this Bible so that you can know God.
How dare you try to understand God with your intellect? Nobody can understand God. Nobody can suppress God. You can't truly understand how to contact and know God, which is why I'm going to give you my Bible and my Jesus and my perception of God, because I know, even though no man can know. So not only are you stupid, but like you 2 times, like you stupid, like you are a different level, like you are a special level of stupid.
It doesn't make sense. It is not adding up. You're giving me a book that was inspired by God, written by men who also don't know the true depths of God as well. That you put yourself in a loop. You're trying to tell me that I'm wrong about my perception of God, while your perception of God somehow is superior to my perception of God. And you're essentially telling me that my perception of God is wrong, but nobody can truly conceptualize God, because God is just too complex and too supreme and infinite for us to even understand it. But somehow you can only understand God through your one little Bible, small place in one small area of life. If your God was so known, if your God is so present and evidential in nature, you will see so many different cultures of people throughout the whole world come to the same conclusion. That is not what you see. When you study different cultures of people, you see different realities. You see different cultures. You see different names. You see different archetypes and different faces, and just different ways of expressing God. And that is the beauty of supreme and infinite intelligence, is that there is no just one way or one face or one archetype for God. And it's scary for people to turn away from Jesus. It's very scary for people to walk down that path, because not only is your life in jeopardy, not only is your relationships are in jeopardy, but your very identity, who you see yourself as, because you only identify yourself with God. You only identify yourself with Jesus. And once you understand and realize that that's no longer a thing, it's an illusion, it puts you in a deep state of rage and frustration and confusion. You're mad at life itself. It's like, what really is life? And then it puts you into a state of confusion. It's like, well, what truly is the real path? And that brings you to that conclusion of what truly is the real path. How do I truly find God? How do I truly find that connection? Because you could still have a sense of understanding that there is a higher power, but for a huge fact, it ain't that nigga in the Bible. So I can give my man's here props for that, Mr. Rhett. I can give him props for that, on the basis of that. And especially like when people try to gaslight you for using your own mind and your own intelligence, which I feel like that's kind of a bit of what happened in the book of Genesis, where Adam and Eve eat from the forbidden fruit. they're eating from the knowledge or the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it's like, why didn't you want them to have knowledge of good and evil? You can't survive in life without knowing both aspects of life. You see what I'm saying? So everybody will try to demonize the serpent, even go farther to saying that the serpent was the devil. And yet in the book of Genesis, in the same chapter that they ate the fruit, Yahweh goes back to his divine counsel and tells them that they have become like us, knowing good and evil, and if they eat from the tree of life, they shall live forever. Now, Christians will try to soften it up and sugar it up and tell you that God was looking out for you and he loves you so much that he didn't want you to live forever in sin. But we do. By the logic that we need Jesus Christ and all these different things, the life of sin or to live in sin never truly goes away. And if that is the case, that God didn't want us to live in sin forever, why did he press the reset button when it came to Noah, in the times of Noah, when he couldn't even get his angels, his children, under control because they wanted some punani? You see what I'm saying? That you're dealing with an entity that is very insecure, very jealous, very tyrannical, very quick to anger, while also claiming he is slow to anger unless you piss him the fuck off. It's very interesting how people will try to justify this entity. And this is an entity that is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. So they're trying to say, oh, he's a little softer in the New Testament. Now you are under grace, but if you don't accept his grace, you're going to be under eternal torment. Very interesting. And again, I could go, I can go for a very long time on talking about that, but we'll just keep it there. All right, let's continue.
Specifically conservative, or mostly conservative evangelical Christians. So I was trusting in a group of people in both scenarios. And I feel like I've got sufficient reason to choose to trust the specialist. I mean, I'm not going to try to convince you of that. That's a whole nother video in and of itself, but that's the conclusion that I came to. I mean, they don't claim to be infallible or inerrant, but I do believe that they are my best hope at understanding what is actually true. Now, I am not saying that there aren't Christians who agree with scientific truth. In fact, some of the experts that I read in those areas, especially initially, were in fact Christians. So making a decision to trust the specialist did not necessitate me no longer being a Christian. It's just that trusting them necessitated me becoming a different kind of Christian than I was. Eventually, in my case, following that rabbit hole led to my deconversion. It's a long story. There's several podcasts about it. It's probably going to be a bore. And listen, I could still be wrong. I still ask myself that on a regular basis. What if I'm wrong? I mean, listen, maybe all these PhDs are deceived. Maybe they're all a victim to some sort of agenda, or they're perpetrating some sort of agenda. That's not the impression that I get. At the end of the day, I think you can develop your understanding of people who have deconstructed by listening to what other people say about them, or you can just listen to them and take them at their word.
Love it.
Hey, did you know?
Nothing needs to be added or taken away from that. And I want to add on, though, however, to his last part where he says he could still be wrong. And what typically happens when you are a Christian and when you was raised up as a Christian is that you are consistently, continuously being demeaned and diminished for using your mind and asking questions and using critical thinking skills. So you can't help but to continue to ask yourself, am I wrong or am I right? Is this the true way or is there another way? Because you lived all your life in this bit of confusion and never really truly fervent in your faith. And even when you try to think outside of the box or ask questions that you're not supposed to ask, everybody shames you. So now you can't even truly even have confidence in what you believe in, much less in yourself. And to me personally, just analyzing that, I think that is a bit of trauma. I think for you to come to a conclusion of your deconversion and deconstructing and you don't know, you know what I'm saying? You don't know for a fact that what you believe in is to be true. I think that is a bit, you know what I'm saying? And again, that's just my personal perspective on that aspect. And I'm not saying just because you deconstruct and you say that this particular God isn't real means that you go upon a path of truth that everybody should follow, everybody should look at. But if you can't make that determination that the God that you used to believe in is no longer real, and you deconstructing from that and you still questioning, maybe you're still deconstructing and I can give you that leeway. But I truly feel like that aspect comes from the traumatic experiences of what happens in the church or in a Christian household, or being raised up as a Christian, where you are constantly being told not to look this way, not to look that way. Don't turn on the TV to the History Channel. Don't look at things that might draw you away from God and lead you astray. These were things I used to hear in the church, that you weren't supposed to read too many books, because if you were to read certain books that are a little superstitious or witchcraft or magical or talked about other different religions, you were supposed to stay away from that, because if you were to read these different type of things, it could lead you astray. That sounds like a cult, don't it? That sounds like a cult to me. And I knew so much about the Bible to a point where I came to the conclusion that, oh, this is not real for me personally. And I have a podcast on this on the basis of my deconversion and deconstructing as well, because I came to the conclusion after I found out many different things, especially concerning my ancestry, that, oh, this is not my God. This is not the religion I'm supposed to be under, the spiritual system I'm supposed to be practicing. But if you would like to know a little bit more on my basis of how I deconstructed from Christianity, click on this video right here. All right. You do not want to miss that one. All right. Till next time, I will see you there.